Ilvermorny, it's only the best wizard school in the whole world.
I think you'll find that the best wizarding school in the world is Hogwarts.
Most Harry Potter fans know all about Hogwarts, but some may not know that much about the American wizarding school, Ilvermorny. Ilvermorny's creation and customs were heavily inspired by Hogwarts, which predates the American school, but there are many differences between the two. I'm really excited to dive deeper into Harry Potter lore and really look more at the nuanced parts of the wizarding world. If you enjoyed this video, please consider liking and sharing. It will greatly help to grow and sustain the channel. And if you like what you see, hit that subscribe button, and you can also follow me on all of my other social medias, all of which are linked down below and all of which house similar content that I make here on this channel. Now that I've said that, let's get into it. The founders. While each school both have 4 founders, they are very different. Hogwarts has 4 highly accomplished adult witches and wizards: Godric Gryffindor, Helga Hufflepuff, Rowena Ravenclaw, and Salazar Slytherin, while Ilvermorny is the complete opposite. The founders for the American school were actually a family of pretty much unknown people. Isolde Sayer was the only one who could even perform magic. She, funnily enough, is a descendant of Salazar Slytherin himself, who, as we just said, was one of the Hogwarts founders. Then, James Stewart, her husband, did not possess magic at all. In fact, he was a muggle, or as they call it in America, a no-maj.
At least tell me you took care of the no-maj.
The what?
The no-maj. The non-wizard.
Sorry, we call them muggles.
And the other 2 founders were 2 kids, Chadwick and Webster Boot, who Isolde and James had adopted as their sons. Chadwick and Webster didn't actually know magic until the school opened, so 2 of the 4 founders were students, and 1 was a muggle, which can't be said for Hogwarts, and probably every other wizarding school in the world. The school's name. The name for Hogwarts came from a dream that Rowena Ravenclaw had. In her dream, she followed a warty hog in the hills of Scotland, which just so happened to lead her to where the school would be built. They took that dream and named the school Hogwarts after that warty hog. Meanwhile, Ilvermorny was named as such because that was the name of the house that Isolde had been born in and where she was raised. That house ended up burning down, which killed both of her parents, and she was taken in by her aunt, Gormleth Gaunt, only to find out years later that she was the one who burned the house down and murdered her parents. Isolde wanted to honor her parents and pick a name that had sentimental value to her, thus giving the American wizarding school the title of Ilvermorny. The building. When Hogwarts was built, it was a castle from the start, and Rowena Ravenclaw was the one who made the floor plan for the school, so it never really changed. Meanwhile, Ilvermorny was not always a castle. It actually started out as a small granite house that James built, and it was simply the home of their family. Then, over time, they had to make it bigger and bigger as the school got bigger. Isolde used magic to do this, and interestingly, she did so with the wand of Salazar Slytherin himself, which she had stolen from her aunt Gormleth Gaunt. Just a fun little connection there. The fact that it started out as a family home shows that they never planned for Ilvermorny to become what it did, while the Hogwarts founders always knew their intention from the start when building that castle. The First Headmasters. Immediately, Gryffindor, Slytherin, Ravenclaw, and Hufflepuff became the leaders of the school. The 4 shared this rank and dictated everything that went on in the castle. Then, in America, only 2 of the 4 founders led the school when it first opened, because as said, Chadwick and Webster were actually students. The very first students, in fact. The students accepted. Hogwarts is famous for Slytherin's departure from the school and the other 3 founders. He only wanted to admit purebloods, but the other 3 wanted to accept students of all blood status. This added some controversy to the school, especially because though Slytherin was gone, the house he created still carried the ideals he possessed, meaning many purebloods were grouped together, making one house a bit more evil than the others.
There's not a witch or wizard who went bad who wasn't in Slytherin.
Then there's also the scandal with the Chamber of Secrets that Slytherin built, hoping to wipe out any Muggleborns the school admitted. Meanwhile, Ilvermorny was the complete opposite. They had 0 controversies like this, and from the start, Ilvermorny accepted anyone and everyone who had magical ability. Granted, because they were so small in the beginning, any student they could get was monumental. But even so, I don't think they would exclude anyone, considering that one of their headmasters was literally a muggle or a no-maj. One thing interesting to note is that the founders that had no controversies were honored with statues that lay outside the school. Meanwhile, the Hogwarts founders, many of whom had controversial parts of their lives outside of the formation of Hogwarts as well, were not honored in any way close to this. In fact, there's barely anything at Hogwarts that depicts them, much less honors them, besides the house names. The school's houses. As discussed, the Hogwarts houses were named after the 4 founders. Slytherin, as we said, was focused on blood purity, but other traits they value are ambition, leadership, self-preservation, cunning, and resourcefulness, and their mascot was a snake. Gryffindor House, meanwhile, whose mascot was a lion, prioritized bravery, daring, nerve, and chivalry. Then Ravenclaw, whose mascot is an eagle, valued intelligence, knowledge, curiosity, creativity, and wit. And finally, Hufflepuff, whose mascot is a badger, values hard work, dedication, patience, loyalty, and fair play. And I will add that Gryffindor, Slytherin, and Ravenclaw are more selective, and any students that they did not want, Hufflepuff took on with pleasure. Ilvermorny houses were somewhat based on Hogwarts houses. It was Chadwick and Webster's idea to base their system off of Hogwarts because they had always dreamed of going there. Like Hogwarts, each founder was responsible for creating one house, and each one picked their own mascot, which was simply their favorite magical beast. And that was the name of the house, simply the beast chosen. Chadwick chose the Thunderbird, Webster chose the Wampus Cat, Isolde chose the Horned Serpent, and finally, James chose the Pukwudgie because it was the only magical beast he knew of, having been told about the Pukwudgie named William, who we'll get back to later in the video. Many say that these houses represent a whole wizard. The serpent is the mind, the Wampus is the body, the Pukwudgie the heart, and the Thunderbird the soul. Over time, these houses took on traits of their creators, though this did not happen right away like it did for the 4 founders of Hogwarts. It actually took some time because the Ilvermorny founders had not yet had their story told. Eventually though, Isolde's house favored scholars, matching her thirst for knowledge. The Wampus favored warriors, which makes perfect sense seeing as Webster would later become an Auror working for the American ministry MACUSA. James's house, Pukwudgie, favored healers, which goes along with his ability as a sort of doctor, a talent that developed because he was pretty limited on what he could do, given that he possessed no magic himself. And finally, Chadwick's house, the Thunderbird, favored adventurers, which again makes perfect sense as he spent his later life traveling the world and writing books that would all be studied at Ilvermorny. The founders' children. While we're discussing the family of the founders, James and Isolde actually had 2 more daughters. They were twin girls named Rhiannoch and Martha. While Rhiannoch eventually became the Defense Against the Dark Arts teacher at the school that her parents had founded, Martha turned out to be a squib, meaning she was born with no magical ability. It was too painful for her to stay at Ilvermorny knowing she could never attend the school herself. Thus, she decided to leave to join the Muggle world, or Nomad world, and she married another Nomad, living the rest of her life away from the Wizarding world. Isolde and James loved Martha very much despite the fact that she was a squib. They were very supportive parents through and through. The same cannot be said for Hogwarts and Rowena Ravenclaw's daughter Helena. The mother and daughter had a very complicated and messy relationship created by the fact that Helena could never live up to the great witch Rowena was, which both disappointed Rowena and made Helena feel less than. Filled with resentment, Helena stole her mother's very valuable diadem, the relic she had chosen for Ravenclaw House, and Helena fled with it. Rowena sent the Baron to find her, which ultimately led to him killing both Helena and himself. This is just another example of how much controversy surrounded the school of Hogwarts, which just wasn't the case for Ilvermorny. Sorting. While the Hogwarts founders were alive, they interviewed each student, and based on how that interview went, they would either take or deny that student from their house. And as said, when Gryffindor, Slytherin, and Ravenclaw did not want a student, Hufflepuff happily welcomed them to her house. Eventually though, as the founders got older and became tired of interviewing so many students year after year, Gryffindor one day took the hat he was wearing off of his head, and the 4 of them enchanted it to understand the traits they value, and thus, the Sorting Hat was created, which from then on would be the thing that sorted students at Hogwarts. The Sorting Hat can sometimes have what's called a hat stall, which is when it's hung up on where to place a student thinking they would fit into multiple different houses. A hat stall is defined by the fact that it takes more than 5 minutes to make the choice, and it often takes the student's preference into consideration in order to break the tie. Some notable witches and wizards this happened to are Minerva McGonagall, Phileas Flitwick, Peter Pettigrew, and Gilderoy Lockhart, just to name a few. Ilvermorny has a very different method of sorting. They have a room with 4 wooden carvings, each depicting the house's mascot. These wooden carvings would be the tool to sort the students in America. When a student stands before them, if the serpent wants the child, its forehead glows. If the wampus wants them, it growls. If the thunderbird wants the student, it beats their wings. And if the Pukwudgie wants them, it raises an arrow into the air. Similar to the hat stall, 2 or more of the Ilvermorny houses can try to claim the student, and in this scenario, the student gets to choose which house they want to join. Sometimes all 4 mascots can choose a child, but this is extremely rare, happening about once every decade. This happened to Serafina Pickery, who became the president of MACUSA during the events of the Fantastic Beasts films. Boarding. From the start, Hogwarts knew that they were going to be a boarding school, having the students live there during the entire school year besides holidays, of course. However, Ilvermorny was not originally a boarding school. This makes sense, seeing as it was originally the home of Isolde and James's family. For much of the school's existence, students merely showed up for the day to take their classes. Once they reached the 19th century, however, and the school had gained a magnificent reputation, they decided to make it a boarding school like Hogwarts. Wand laws. Hogwarts expects their students to get their wands before arriving for their first year of school, and that wand always belongs to them. There's nothing the school does to regulate the students having wands, as they leave that up to the Ministry of Magic if a student uses it outside of school while being underage. In America, however, they have much stricter wand laws, and they have much more serious wand control. You don't get a wand at Ilvermorny until you are sorted into your house. Following being sorted, they take students into a room where they are then granted a wand. However, unlike Hogwarts, underage students are not allowed to bring their wand home during holidays. They must leave it at the school, showing just how serious wand control is in America. This became a bit more lenient in 1965, but even then, wand control was regulated far more than in Europe. Hired creatures. Both Ilvermorny and Hogwarts have small magical creatures that help run the school. Hogwarts of course has house elves who clean, cook, and maintain the inside of the castle. The house elves are technically slaves, but Helga Hufflepuff brought them to the school knowing that they would be far better treated here at Hogwarts than in the service of pureblood witches and wizards who mistreated the creatures, especially considering the time period in which Hogwarts was built. Ilvermorny has another species of small creatures in the service of the school, that being Pukwudgies, a creature that of course represents one of the houses at Ilvermorny. Their job is a bit different than the house elves though. They are employed as the school security, and unlike the house elves, they are paid for their service. The only house elf that was ever paid at Hogwarts was Dobby. As mentioned earlier, the inspiration for James's house was a Pukwudgie he had known of named William. When the family and the school was attacked by Gormlaith Gaunt, Isolde's aunt, William came to their rescue and saved their entire family. Following this, William was the one that appointed himself and many other Pukwudgies as the school security. Today, there is a very aged Pukwudgie at Ilvermorny that answers to the name William. When asked if he was the same William that saved the founders, he laughs at this idea. He points out that William would be over 300 years old. However, nobody actually knows how long Pukwudgies live. William refuses to let anyone else polish the statue of Isolde outside the school, and on the anniversary of her death every year, he lays mayflowers next to her statue, signifying the ship that took Isolde to America and how she ended up meeting the original William. And that is every difference between the American Wizarding School and the British Wizarding School. That's all I have for you guys today. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.